I'm Valerie Biden Owens, chair of the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware. Today, I have the privilege of introducing Mayor Lacey Beaty. She was sworn in as the 34th mayor of Beaverton, Oregon in January 2021. She is the first woman and youngest ever mayor in the city's history. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us today on All Politics is Personal, a program where we introduce the public to the person behind the politician. Anyone can research your accomplishments and achievements, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about you. So start out and tell us about your childhood. And did you grow up in Beaverton?
I did not, but it's my daughter's hometown, and I gave birth to two seventh-generation Oregonians, so I've done my fair share. But I grew up right outside San Diego in a suburb called Poway, and growing up in San Diego was just the best life a kid could ask for. Beaches, surfing, sunshine all around, and when I joined the Army out of high school, it was like a whole new world had opened up. I thought everyone lived like Californians, but apparently they don't.
And the Navy SEALs are there in San Diego, right?
A lot of military is in San Diego, so yeah.
But you went with the Army.
Yeah, I went with the best branch.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my nephew, Bo, was in the Army National Guard.
Yeah.
And how did you, anybody military in your family?
No.
You just decided to go?
Yeah. I was raised by a single mom, and while she really, really pushed on us that college was the great separator, there wasn't anyone to teach me like how to go to college, how to afford it, how to do it. And I wasn't interested in taking on a lot of debt to not understand what I wanted to do. And I thought if I join the Army, I'll get some good experience and a way to pay for college. And I had joined right around 9/11. And I thought when they added Germany in my contract, I thought, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to go to Germany. I'm going to drink beer, and then I'm going to get out and go to college. And the invasion of Iraq changed all of that. I did go to Germany. I did drink a lot of beer, but I ended up in Iraq as a 19-year-old, and that fundamentally changed everything after my life. And so I tell people all the time that I had the most ordinary military experience for someone that served in the early 2000s, but it led to such an extraordinary life.
But it wasn't ordinary. You were a medic in combat for 5 years in Iraq.
Well, I spent 1 year in Iraq and 5 years between North Carolina, where I met my husband, Yuma Proving Grounds, where they do the high altitude, low open. So I got to work in a medical clinic there. And the Army trained me to be an X-ray tech. But in that era, they trained you to be a medic too. And so even though I had this year-long extensive school, I worked the majority of my career as a medic and really treating people in their very vulnerable time. But in my era of service, the post 9/11, it was ordinary. But it wasn't ordinary for military service before that.
How come you didn't go into medicine? It seems like a natural progression.
When I got off active duty and I moved to the state of Oregon, my husband's from there, and we were really trying to choose between San Diego and Oregon. And my husband serves full time in the Oregon National Guard, so we got to pick where we wanted to go. There wasn't any reciprocity with my license to be able to do X-ray stuff. And so I would have had to redo the entire, 2-year school that I did in the Army. So I did what most people do when they're confused. I went to college. I studied political science and history at Oregon State. And then I went on to get a master's in organizational leadership. And I did work in healthcare. Prior to being the mayor, I worked at a federally qualified health center, Virginia Garcia Memorial Health Center. I oversaw our school-based health center, so doing services right where kids were going to school. And I staffed our migrant farm camps and treating migrant farm workers out in the field where they were every day. So I did a different kind of medicine. I did more the administrative side, but the Army just gave me so much immense opportunity, college, grad school, the ability to buy a home. my husband, who we've been married 20 years and we have 2 wonderful kids, it's not been the easiest life. I'm the only mayor in the country married to an active duty service member right now. And so I have this dual role of the mayor of Beaverton and an Army officer's wife.
Do you have to travel, though, with the Army at different stations? For
No.
your husband, has he been deployed to different areas?
He's been deployed, but we chose National Guard because we wanted to stay
Yeah.
in Oregon. So he works to support all of the full-time National Guard soldiers in the state, but he did deploy to Afghanistan twice, Colombia, and South America. He has done so many different jobs in the military, but right now he has a doctorate in education and he works for the adjutant general, going into schools, talking about how the National Guard is different than active duty, and that in our state, the National Guard works for the governor.
How many children? You said you have 2 children.
2. Mhm.
And how old are they?
8 and 2. So we're busy.
Girls?
Both girls.
Yeah, you are. That's a harder job
I
than
think so.
than being mayor.
Totally.
Although my brother, I have my brother's in public office,
Of course.
and he said the hardest job in the world is being a mayor, because everybody knows where you live and they can come up and they can knock on your door, and if that road is not plowed, it's not plowed.
Yeah.
And so, what's your weather like, by the way?
Oregon has had extreme weather because of climate change. So when we first moved to Oregon in 2008, the weather was pretty mild, rainy all the time. Since I've been mayor, we've had extreme heat domes, 115 degrees.
Yeah.
Right now, we're in our longest streak of no snow that we've had. The ski mountains aren't only open 2 days this year, which is a huge part of our economy, is sports and outdoorism. It's rough, but I left and it was 50 degrees in January, which is pretty much unheard of for our time of the year.
Okay, but you know what? Here we're talking about when you're being deployed, you're having been deployed in Oregon. We skipped over high school.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And because there's a part of high school that's pretty significant. What was your favorite part of high school?
Sports, for sure.
Okay.
I played lacrosse and was on the first team. Like, it was recognized as a sport in 2002 when I was in high school, and we won the first state championship. I now coach my daughter's 3rd grade team. And so sports is just so fundamental to learning how to be a mayor. Teamwork, doing things when you don't want to do it, and it just gives you the opportunity to disconnect from everything else when you're playing.
Weren't you the state? You're a goalie.
Yep.
In lacrosse. This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to mention my daughter.
Yeah.
She was a lacrosse player in high school and in college,
Awesome.
and she was attack.
Yeah.
But the goalie, my God, that's the toughest job on the team.
I think so. It's the toughest, where everything stops. Like the mayor, the buck stops with me. In lacrosse, the buck stops with the goalie. Or if you let it go by, you're not a goalie for very long. You put yourself in harm's way, and it's exciting. And you're always in reaction mode. And then when you have the ball, you're setting the tone for the defense. So I think sports, I hire athletes all the time because they know how to do things. And lacrosse, I think, is just the best sport. And I'm so delighted that my 8-year-old loves it, because I didn't know what I would do if she wanted to be a softball player.
I get it. I understand it. There's another thing that I did a little research on you, that you said mudslides. You are a marathon racer, or just what's it called, a mudslide racer?
I do.
What's it called?
I do run marathons. I ran the Rock and Roll Marathon last year for our 20th wedding anniversary, but I love Spartan racing. I do a lot of obstacle course.
That's the word I was looking for.
It's ironic because in the Army, they pay you to do it. And now I've had a few thoughts as I've run these races. Now I'm paying other people to do something that I used to hate in the Army. But it is just totally disconnect from my mayor's job. You're one of everyone else. No one recognizes you. You're covered in dirt. And I love a challenge. And so putting races out in front of me keeps me motivated to get up and work out and stay fit. I lost my mom to cancer last year, and she got an extra 2 years to a very aggressive cancer because she was so fit and a marathon runner. And so the doctors constantly said, you got this extra time because you chose fitness. And it was the greatest gift my mom gave me, was that last 2 years of her life. And so I make sure that fitness, not just because of my background, but it's embedded in our life because my daughters are going to depend on it in the future.
So that's how the mudslide prepares you for Anything, all the obstacles that you're going to meet as a mayor.
Totally. And I would say that Mayor, your brother was correct that being the mayor is the hardest job. They do find you. The roads aren't plowed, they notice. If the water doesn't turn on, they notice. It's where policy and action meet. And you don't, unlike lawmakers or other levels of government, they gavel out and go home. They don't see the outcome of their decision making the way that mayors do.
So the hardest part of being a mayor is what you have to be there on time and make things work. Um, what is the why mayor? That's what flicked you from being the athlete, being in the Army. First of all, being the all-state athlete, going into the Army, going to college. Did you get involved in political activism before you went to elective office? How'd you get to be you?
So the first election I was old enough to vote in was the Bush-Kerry election, and I voted from Iraq, and I've never missed an election since then. I wrote and got everyone's absentee ballot. It was really early in the war when I served, and there wasn't this mechanism for voting the way that it exists now. You had to actually write and get an absentee ballot, and I helped everyone in my company do that. We held voter forums. Right before we deployed to Iraq, I sat in a chow hall getting ready to deploy, and I watched Donald Rumsfeld on TV say, "We go to war with the army we have and not the army we want." And I didn't know in that moment that all these years later it would lead to me being the mayor, but I have thought about that moment so much over the 20 years since I served, because decisions are made by those that show up. And we could have taken a beat there. We could have made sure that women had gear that was protective. I drove an ambulance that was green from Vietnam. We painted it when we were there. We need people that understand that their decision making impacts everyday people. A 19-year-old kid from San Diego was sent to war without gear that didn't fit correctly because we didn't take a minute to think about how people's lives would be impacted. And so that moment led to, when I got out of the Army, the emotion that I wasn't prepared for was how lonely it was. When you serve, you have people around you, you have a mission, you feel like you're a part of something, and then you get out and you're all alone. My husband was still serving, so he had this immediate connection, and I was trying to figure out in a new city what I was going to do with my life. And a mentor told me, just because you're done serving doesn't mean you need to be done serving. So figure out another way. So I started volunteering with the city, kind of out of a way just to meet people and make connections. And I just saw who was making decisions. And I thought, I think I could do that better.
And how long did it take you to run? Was mayor the very first jump that you made into elective office?
No, I served on the city council for 6 years before I was the mayor. I made a jump to run for city council after serving on the city's vision advisory committee. And it was really awesome to sit around and dream about what the city could look like for 20 years. What I learned about that experience is we ask people what they want, but not what they're willing to pay for. And so a lot of times the vision of what people were asking for in the city budget didn't align. And I remember sitting in the council chambers listening to them talk about millennials, which I'm a geriatric millennial, one of the older ones, but they were saying all millennials want to live in high-rise buildings and apartments. And I thought, no, we can't afford housing. So we're living in places like this because we want to have the American dream. And so I ran against the guy, an incumbent, which I didn't even know how to run for office. I went to the library and got a book, How to Run for Office. The first chapter of that book said, don't run against an incumbent, you'll lose. And I was like, all right, I'm already behind the 8 ball on this one. And right when I was making that decision to run, my husband got a call that one of the members in his unit that was going forward to Afghanistan, he wasn't scheduled to go, got injured, and that he was going to go now.
Oh, boy.
And we came home and had a tough conversation in our house, because military families do this. We have tough conversations about the worst thing that might happen. And I said, do you want me not to run so I could support you? And he said, absolutely not. He was an infantry officer. I came home and he had taken the TV off the wall and had maps, like a true Army infantry officer, maps of the city.
Wow.
And he said, we'll plug the TV in and you can watch TV when you win. And he jumped in full force with me. And the night in election in May, the election was called at 8:05. I won. and I drove him straight to the airport, and he went to Afghanistan for a year. His commanding officer let him stay behind a few days for my election, and then he went to Afghanistan for a year.
God bless you both. That military families, you don't. I don't know if you get enough. You sure get enough credit from me and but we don't. People don't really know the sacrifices and appreciate or comprehend of how difficult it is and what you do.
Yeah.
Let me go back a little bit to your youth.
Yeah.
Your younger days.
My younger days.
You talked about losing your mom.
Yeah.
Which is horrific. Was there anything when you grew up that your mom embedded in you? In our house, there was the expressions, your word is your bond, or, you get knocked down, get up. Was there something, a core value or character that you think that your mom embedded in you?
She would tell us all the time to do hard things and not take the easy route. And she used to tell me growing up, and then repeated this to me when I was running for office, that you can't say the right thing to the wrong person. And
say that again?
You can't say the right thing to the wrong person. And that's really important in my political life right now, because I believe in compromise. I'm a mayor. I serve all sides of the political spectrum. As a proud Democrat, it is hard sometimes to be in local government office. But when I get into an argument with somebody, I have to assess out instantly, is there room for compromise? Mm-hmm. Or am I not saying the right thing to the wrong person? If they've already made up their mind and their decision, I have to move on because there's 100 other things to do. And I think in politics right now, the art of compromise is gone and people are really dug in. But my mom's voice rings through my head all the time when I'm in these intense debates, because we're not interested in learning from each other in politics right now. Yeah. We're interested in screaming at each other. And so I assess out really quickly that difference because my mom has said it to me so many times growing up.
How hopeful are you?
I am incredibly hopeful. I have 2 daughters. We must. America is the best country on the planet. I've been a military spouse for 20 years. My entire life has been about service to our country and our city. And we are not the shining example that we ought to be. And so, but we can be. We're not lost. America is still everything that we've been doing for 250 years. And we have to remember that right now more than ever. We are more than a president. We are more than an elected official. America is where dreams happen, and we have to continue to believe it.
Yes, because what happens when you stop dreaming? One last question.
Yeah.
How much does faith play a role in your life?
I grew up incredibly religious, and it's what drives most decisions. But I'll tell you this, when my mom was in hospice, or when she got notice that she was going into hospice, she wanted me to take her to go walk the Camino in Spain, which is a pilgrimage. And 2 months before she passed, in the middle of my reelection for mayor, we went and walked to the Camino.
You did?
And we spent 10 days together. And it was one of the most transformational moments of my life. I was her Sherpa. I took care of all the things on the trip. And of all the things my mom did for me growing up, doing this thing for her was the most important. And when she was in hospice in her final days, I sat and read her Bible to her every day. I believed that she heard me. She was in a coma. And out of her Bible dropped this handwritten note that said, "The best expression of love is time." And I couldn't have think of a better moment of my mom speaking to me. I tattooed it right here in her handwriting on my arm so I could remember it every single day. But my mom, a woman of faith, a pillar in our family, she gave us in abundance her time. And so I'm trying to do that with my daughters right now.
God bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to go on to something frivolous now.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm talking about our moms. Yeah. Kind of is beautiful, but also so emotional. Yeah. Just thinking of my mom, who sounds very much like yours. Okay, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
What profession other than your own would you be?
I think another profession I could do is be an ad executive making commercials.
One word to describe yourself.
Tenacious.
Favorite movie?
I tell people it's Field of Dreams early on because I thought it sounded really smart, but for everyone out there, it's actually Talladega Nights.
Favorite music?
It depends on the music or on the mood. I love country when I'm sad. I love pop with my kids. I love rock when I'm hanging out with my husband. Music is on in our house all the time. My kids play instruments, so does my husband. So all of it.
Okay. Do you play anything?
I am learning to play the guitar in my 40s because I read that you should have a new talent. And I want my 8-year-old to not quit piano lessons. As an elected official, doing things I'm not good at is really not in my vocabulary, but I'm sticking with it so my daughter sticks with it.
Do you have a hidden talent?
I think
A would-be guitarist.
It
A
would
would-be add
one day.
man.
Relationships. It's the currency of the realm, and I
Sure.
prioritize relationships over everything else.
Your birthday, not your year, but the day. Your and what sign are you?
June 6th.
Oh, D-Day.
Yep. And as a history major, love that. But I'm a Gemini. So
And
who
are
knows when
you?
you wake up? Oh, I'm a true Gemini. It depends on which twin wakes up in the morning for sure.
I'm a Scorpio.
Yeah.
So we can make it work.
We can make it
Yeah,
work.
no, we can. I don't know what I'm going to wake up like either. Favorite vacation spot?
Simple. Central Oregon, Bend with my family. It's somewhere we go to get away and ski and be outdoors.
And when you grow up more, what are you going to be?
I hope a good citizen. I hope a really great person. But if we're dreaming big, I'd love to be an ambassador.
I would love to come and visit you in the embassy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here, Mayor. And thanks to our partners at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. And remember, all politics is personal.